and it's like, whoa.
Game on. This thing
How
is
did-
on.
How did that happen? Check.
Yeah. Look, there's people here.
I know that's pretty awesome. It's because we've been MIA for a few weeks here. This is the pre-show. Actually, Brian and I just had our own private pre-show, and now this is the pre-show, and then we'll start in like a minute with a nice clean open for the audio recording. So the stuff you're hearing right now will not be heard by anyone else
Ever again.
ever.
Unless they access the stream on your YouTube channel.
Well, that's a good point. But still, it's those people that are here, like the people I'm speaking to, they'll hear it here. Okay. Well, anyway, it won't be live, but it will be here in this spot.
We're so high energy right now.
Kind of, yeah. Well, should we do this thing?
Yeah, let's just get into it. Everybody's here. Let's just do it.
All right. Welcome inside. It's episode 13 for real this time of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. My name is Chris Moran, the Midlife Pilot on YouTube. And as always, my co-host with me from Music Row, almost, Nashville, Tennessee, the legendary Brian Siskind.
Hey, we made it back. We made it back to our respective homes. And look, we both have limbs and all of our faculties. This is amazing.
It's pretty remarkable, truthfully. And a lot of folks are in the chat with us tonight here on YouTube, where we record these podcast episodes live, who were along for the flying as well. By a lot, I see one so far, but is here with us as well. And so we have a lot of stuff to kind of unpack as we get into that tonight. But are you recovered? I mean, how are you doing currently?
Yeah, I mean, so we'll get into the details, but I mean, my flight back was a long one, the longest I've ever done for sure. And then I had a drive to do after that. But anyway, when I got back, it was sort of, I had company here. So as soon as I came in the door, it was sort of like continuing the sort of vibe of being not in my normal daily reality. And we stayed up a little bit late again. And then the last couple of days have been, as a freelancer, especially picking up the pieces of my life and trying to put them back together again, and making sure I'm keeping up with or securing gainful employment so that I can function as a human being. So the last couple of days have been just sleeping really hard, eating, and taking naps and just trying to recover, man. It's definitely been a lot. I'm sure though, for you, even though you didn't have to travel as far, your headspace has been occupied by trying to you're the party host, right? You're trying to make sure everybody has a good time. You're trying to make sure everybody's got what they need. So you're probably just thrilled to only be dealing with normal family matters and just the home and yourself for a moment, not all of us nutbags.
For sure. That was part of it. And so it was a quick trip home on Sunday. In fact, I told our group text, I felt guilty even telling you guys that I made it home because it was like 2 hours door to door for me from the Outer Banks back to West Virginia. And we had a great flight back and then put the plane away. And it was immediately right back to it, back to work. I had work. Monday morning. And so it was just right back into it. And I told you, Brian, on the phone earlier, we texting, I was rushing back to get here in time. Was at the airport doing an oil change on the Cherokee that it just had in the Outer Banks. So, it's been pretty much a whirlwind. I haven't had a whole bunch of time really to unpack. I mean, I copied some footage and kind of looked through some stuff and really just kind of thought. I've had a lot of time to think though. And I think what's going to be fun about tonight is kind of unpacking what we did on the fly, and obviously we have some stories to tell, but also what it was that I thought it was and then what it wasn't, or the things that surprised me about it. But the biggest one you mentioned already, which was just I did not anticipate how hard it was going to be to host, because it was for those who don't know, we had a fly-in. There were about 5 of us that came down from all over the country and flew into Currituck County Airport, KONX, and stayed in my family's house in Corolla, North Carolina, on the Outer Banks. So there was the part of it that was like hosting, like, just like making sure that we had towels and sheets for everybody and that there was food and people knew how to like unlock the house and take the golf cart and go to the beach, and just the hosting, having a good time, like everybody's comfortable, and it's, so there was that, which was more than I anticipated, just in terms of mental, just what it took mentally to like to think about all that.
Well, and also, hey, I haven't slept in a bunk bed since I was a kid, and I really enjoyed that. So thanks
Did
for
you
that
sleep on
experience.
top or bottom?
I you know, it was just whatever the first one was that I could fall into, so it was the bottom bunk. I do prefer I'm a top bunk kinda guy, but, I just went for the first available.
I
So
like
no,
it.
but it was all good. You did a great job of taking care of everybody despite all the challenge of that, and, it was a lot of it'd be different if everybody was sort of coming at exactly the same time and doing exactly the same thing and all that, but you had different people coming from different places with different schedules at different times with different needs, and that's really what made it kind of, I think, a little bit wild. But I mean, ultimately, all very successful. We're all here. We all had a good time. We all wish that we could have, should have, would have done this or done that, but we just rolled with the punches. And I think it really is a reflection of um, what general aviation actually is, right? In
Right.
reality, where it's like you have your plan, and then there's what happens, and you just adapt. And all considering, we got a bunch of stuff done, and we all just got to be together and have a good time. And so no harm, no foul for the things that maybe we didn't quite get to do. And I know that. I mean, here's the thing. Ultimately, I'm back now knowing that I'm a better pilot than I was before.
Mhm.
So that's hugely valuable, and we got to kick it, so it was good.
It was super fun. Um, Basically, well, I guess, what do you wanna how do you wanna do this? Should we just kinda, like, run down the story time here and, just kinda give the overlay and then maybe get into, like, maybe the things that surprised us and, some of the other factors, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, maybe I think it would be great to kind of run it from your point of view, your experience. You got there first, and then take it from sort of your perspective.
Sure. So, yeah, so I was there a week before the fly-in. So my family was vacationing, there for spring break. So by my family, I mean like my whole immediate family, and then my sister and her husband and kids and my parents. So there were 10 of us in the house for a week. They left the morning, uh, they left Thursday morning, um, of last week. Brian, you showed up. So the people were flying in Thursday, but because of the unknowns of your like long trip, you ended up coming Wednesday. We coordinated some of that in advance, and we had room for you guys, on Wednesday. So you guys came in on Wednesday night. We kind of hung out, had a good time, cooked out, grilled out, had our first Impossible burgers. Some of you guys had your first Impossible, vegetarian hamburgers.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that your daughter is making us all more responsible people in general, but much
Yeah,
less dieting. So, I mean, we had some Impossible Burgers. It's really good. My friend Giddo slaved over the grill for us for a couple of hours, and we pretended like it was warm outside,
right.
and that was a good time. And then we stayed up entirely too late partying with your family while everybody else was trying to get some sleep, and we made a lot of noise. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We had a really
Exactly.
good time the first night. And just to, like, throw that in there, I was definitely giving myself a couple of days to get there. I didn't know how I was gonna feel. I didn't know what was gonna happen, and just to kind of insert real quick what my experience was getting there, I got to the plane, so I'm the only one who rents a plane. Everybody else is, an owner or part owner or something. So I got down the airport where my rental plane is hosted out of, or living, is an hour and a half southeast of Nashville. I go down there, we pack up everything, we walk out to the plane and realize there's cord showing on the tire. And it was like, oh boy. So luckily we got the mechanic on the field there to swap out a tire with somebody's owner stock while the other one that was being ordered and was already on the way. That was already, like, I was already almost off by a day, just at the get-go. But we got that tire on and we got out of there. Then I flew into my plan was to fly to Ashe County, which is KGEV, as a halfway stopping point. It's pretty crazy runway nestled in the mountains in the Smokies. I really wanted to land there because I have a lot of childhood memories in that area. Got in there and realized that they might be the last memories I ever have because the wind conditions were pretty crazy. Did a nice big go around, flew in between the mountains, had enough room to kind of climb, got up, got out of there, went out on Mount Airy, refueled there, went and got some barbecue, and then we made it from Mount Airy to Currituck. And our timing worked out really well for that, actually, because you were coming back from Newport News, and we essentially got there at the same time, which was cool. At that point, we thought everything's going to go according to plan.
Exactly, yeah. So, I had come back I'd went on a quick work trip that day to Newport News, which is a super short flight, it's about 30 minutes. Newport News International back to, Currituck. We landed there, went back to the house, had a good time that night, and then Friday was arrivals.
Or Thursday, wasn't it Thursday?
I'm sorry, Thursday was arrivals. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was Wednesday, we were on the flight. Thursday was arrivals for everyone, and we did our best. I'm gonna disc jockey some footage here,
yeah.
while we just talk through some of this. But, Mark, from, YouTube channel One Dull Geek arrived, he was the first arrival. Is that true? Yeah, first arrival on Thursday morning in his really, really nice Cherokee 140, um, which he rolled in. Let's see if this works. See if you guys can watch this. We are not able to do that. Well, that's really sad. Anyway, he flew in his really sweet 140. He and his wife landed. We hung out there at the airport for a little bit, wrapped up some work stuff. Um, went back to the um, went back to the house that morning while we were waiting for Mark to show up. Brian and I and Cecilia took the 235 out for a little mini coastal tour and flew up and down the coast. It was cool. Had a good time sightseeing in the 235. Came back and landed. Got everybody in the gigantic rental SUV, and it's an hour drive. The only downside was we were an hour from the airport to the house, but decided like Thursday afternoon made the most sense for us to kind of come back and just kind of hang out and chill a little bit. That was Thursday, right?
That was Thursday. And did anybody else arrive on Thursday?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so then Friday things got wild.
Yeah. So Friday's plan, we had this here. We had a pretty good itinerary plan, pretty full Friday and Saturday. The idea was we were going to fly the pants off these things and like make the most of our time, which is what you would do at a fly. And the weather, we could not have. I mean, it couldn't have been any better both days.
Truly, I mean, it was actually miraculous.
It really was. So Friday, our plan on paper was to get to the airport early. We were trying to get to the airport, I think, at like 8:30. Be taking off at 10. And the plan was to fly from ONX, which is Currituck County. It's on the mainland of North Carolina, kind of the northern part of the, inland from the Outer Banks. Go east over to the shore and fly all the way south down the shore at low altitude, like 1,500 feet, all the way down the coastline. We were going to do a land and take off again at Hatteras Island, Billy Mitchell Field.
Mm-hmm.
Which we on the way down decided, because there was no taxiways and it was complicated to get 4 airplanes like land and taxi back and take off again while others are in the air trying to get in. It was going to be pretty complicated. So on the way down, we called an audible. We were talking on an air-to-air frequency and said, let's just do some low approaches. We'll just all come in one after the other and do a low approach, and keep going south to our destination, which the southernmost point we were flying to was Ocracoke Island, which is a W95 is the identifier. Little airport, super cool. I mean, right on the ocean.
Airstrip.
It's strip. Yeah, let's be honest. Airstrip with
Yeah.
a ramp. So we not a ramp, a parking area and some porta potties that were locked. But anyway, so we we did our low approaches. It was super fun. You'll see in the video I'm producing, we did a pretty fast low approach. Like we didn't slow down and configure for landing. Celia and I on the 235 just came at it. And
For a second, you thought there was a Red Bull logo on your plane?
yeah, I thought
Yeah.
about jumping out, but it was like kind of like came in pretty quick and then climbed away pretty quick, and it was cool. It was a cool like way to see that airport. And so anyway, we all got to W95 successfully. I
Well,
had a
let's talk about that for a minute. You're just
okay.
I think you're breezing right by just one thing. Whiskey 95 was an adventure to land for most of us. It was definitely swirly, kind of unwieldy, unpredictable winds that were happening, and we all came in there and kind of stunk it up, right? Like we all parked and we're just looking at each other like, did we all forget how to land airplanes? That was wild, but we did it. And then, of course, then who arrives?
The Sage. Ben Singer arrives in his 300 horsepower 182 and comes in here and makes us look dumb. I mean, like we were filming his landing and watching him come, and it was just like, oh, here I am, eek, like
Yeah.
right where he wanted to be. And like, oh well, he's now been deemed the sage of the trip, which turned out to be accurate and true for the rest of the trip. So he comes back and parks, and we got some really cool, video and stuff of our planes, like all four of us, like side by side on the ramp, and um, had a short walk. I don't know how long it was, half a mile, maybe a mile. I don't know, to Howard's Pub. Had really good lunch there on the on Ocracoke. And the plan for the rest of the day was to eat lunch there at Ocracoke and then head out on the way back north to land at First Flight. So part of the big kind of climactic point of Friday was to all of us land at First Flight Airport in Kitty Hawk, the birthplace of aviation, park on the ramp and do the whole First Flight Wright Brothers Memorial, like the museum exhibit, like do the whole, just spend a few hours there really and take it all in and just kind of experience that as a group of pilots. So we had kind of formed this departure plan where we were in no way qualified to fly any kind of formation. So we had decided before we went on this trip, we were going to maintain a half mile or greater spacing between ourselves. And we decided the best way to head back was we would go fastest to slowest on departure. We were already pulled back. I mean, we were flying 55% power in the 235 just to kind of stay back with the 172 and the 140. So Ben Singer went first in his 180 big beast 182. And then we were staying behind just for a couple minutes to film. We flew the drone at the airport and filmed One Dog Geek take off and land. So we did a
Good
couple laps.
landings too.
Really good, both of them.
Yeah.
Him coming in and his landing on that filming pass was good. So we shot some drone of that and then loaded the drone up, and then we were going to go next. Ben had left. We were going to follow Ben. So we had pre-flighted already before the drone thing. So it was really just a matter of like starting up, run up, and we left. So we were probably airborne 5 to 7 minutes after Mark left. We took off. That time Brian had started up and was going to be the last one out. And so we were already past downwind and we're flying back up north. So here's the complicated thing. If you've not been in places like ocean front, like, shoreline flying, it's busy. And this was like a beautiful Saturday. Everybody and their brother was out there, banner towers, and there were like just like weekend warriors and like the normal tour operations, the sightseeing tours. And there's just CTAF. So you're just, it's a wild west. I mean, there's no rules. I mean, really, it's over the ocean. You can fly as low as you want. I mean, do whatever you want. It's just kind of like the wild west. And so everybody's talking to each other. Everybody's making call outs, just trying to stay organized. So Cecilia and I are heading up the coast towards like Hatteras, I guess, between Ocracoke and Hatteras. And there's video of this, but I hear Brian call on our air-to-air frequency that we had agreed to talk on. I got a mag out. I have a mag out on the ground. He's doing his run up. And what happened? You were doing your run up, and what happened?
Well, I was doing my run up, and At first, it seemed just like, fouled plugs on one of the mags. It was just sputtering. Uh, you know, Anybody who's trained at a flight school, is not deterred by such a thing. You just, maybe run it up to 2,000 for a minute or so and just keep, you know, working things, and then it'll burn off or whatever. I'm very good about leaning on taxi. I knew it wasn't that. I just figured, I don't know, it's just happening right now. So, but then as I was switching it back, to keep checking it from both back to that one mag, sometimes it would just be sputtering in the way that it would if it was a foul plug, and then I'd go back to both. Then I'd go back to that mag, and it would just be gone, like just there's nothing there. And I immediately thought something's disconnected, P lead, or something is not there. But I was just seeing enough weirdness, and then it backfired pretty intensely, which is what's going to happen. And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm not, you know, everybody's only going to get further away from me, and I'm whether I can solve this right now or not. This is not happening anytime soon, and people are going to be only 45 minutes north of here before too long. Especially the Sage, Ben Singer, and his beast of a plane, and having gone first. But so, and I had a passenger with me, a friend of mine who's not very well versed in being a passenger in a general aviation aircraft. And here we are in this remote island. Everybody all of a sudden is gone. We're left there. And then the plane is making all kinds of shaking and rumbling and noises and backfiring. And he's just like, I mean, he was, I think he was probably halfway out the passenger door before I even really fully had the engine shut off. And I was also thinking, like, I've got to make this radio call. And I've got a handheld, but it's not going to have the range. I got to make this call and then just get this plane turned off. So I made that call. I was just like, yeah, like, I don't know, bad mag. Somebody's got to come back and get me. And then Mark, One Dull Geek, had offered to come back, but he's got the least capacity of anybody. We would have had, because I was already thinking we were gonna have to get everything out of the plane and two people, and then I will hand it over back to you, Chris. But so then I said, uh, negative. Let's get Cherokee 152 down here. I just didn't want to. The Sage was already. I just knew he was further along, and you were the next person that actually had the useful load to come and get us.
Yeah.
So why did you abandon me, Chris? Why did you
Well,
just leave us? Why did you leave us there on the island? I don't understand. I thought we were
this will
friends.
become evident in the video when this thing eventually gets published. So, what's happening in our airplane while all this is going on is that there's about 4 traffic targets that are talking on the radio, and then I see like some of them on ADSB that we're trying to find and avoid, and they're everywhere and they're different directions, and it's just people. There's a lot going on here at this exact moment. So we're trying to juggle like this and like other things in the aircraft. Like a lot is happening at once, so we're switching back and forth between, we're listening to both all the time, but I'm trying to talk on the air to air and also make position calls on CTAF, and like we're looking for these airplanes.
Weren't you also on flight following?
Not yet,
Okay.
because we were gonna pick up flight. We didn't pick up flight following until we decided we were going all the way back.
Okay. Yeah.
So because at this point we had not committed, we were still going to first flight. I
Yeah.
mean, that was still our plan. um so we hear
Spoiler
you.
alert.
Yeah, we didn't go to first flight. So we hear your call. We hear your call, like, somebody needs to come back, and then Mark was like, I'm coming back, and then Brian's like, negative. 152 needs to come back. So I'm telling Cecilia at the same time all this is going on, I also have a mental, I'm not super excited to go back because I just had a pretty sketchy round out and flare. Touchdown was fine, but like it was pretty sketchy. And I didn't feel super great about going back in there. Now, obviously, I would have come back. Like if Ben wasn't coming back, I would have come back. But I was really trying not to do that. And once Ben was able to we got held a Ben on the radio, he immediately was like, oh, I'm turning around. I'll turn around right now. And like kind of came back to get you. So all of that happened in a pretty short, it felt like forever, but that was probably a 5-minute window that all that coordination happened. And at that point, before the fly-in, I had already made some contacts. I had made friends with William Nelson, who's the airport manager at Currituck County Airport, which we haven't really talked about it as an experience yet, but it's a
Yeah.
fantastic airport and aviation community. But I had made
Yes.
a lot of contact with him, who had also given me contact information for 2 AMPs on the field, because I thought with 5 airplanes down here, anything could happen. So I told Brian when Ben was coming back in his 182 that it made sense for us to just make a beeline back for Currituck County, because it was still afternoon. It was 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, we have time to like reach some people and make some plans on how
Mhm.
to get a mechanic down there to look at your plane. So then we got on flight following, and then that got interesting. And there's just, anyway, we went back. Ben came back for Brian and his friend at Ocracoke, picked them up, and then they came back to Currituck as well. Mark continued to Currituck. We all met back at Currituck, and I had also, as soon as we landed, made contact with an AMP named Dave, who's also an instructor at a school that teaches mechanics, teaches airplane, teaches airframe and power plant classes at a local college there on the airport.
The
And
professor.
we call him the professor. He agreed, like, without hesitation, and said, I'll just get all my tools. We'll load everything up in an airplane and fly down Saturday morning, and I'll just spend Saturday like checking it out. I'd love to. So we got all that coordinated kind of on Friday. Um, it was Friday afternoon, late, and then we decided that was probably it. Right? We wanted to do a sunset flight for. I mean, a lot of things. So suddenly, that was kind of the turning point of the weekend.
Mhm.
The plans changed at that moment. Like, the mission changed from like sightseeing tours and flights. The mission then became, how are we going to rescue
My
Brian's
plane.
172 from Ocracoke? And that became the new plan.
Yeah, and I feel like it was also not to say, I mean, I appreciate that it's mostly my fault, but, uh, but it was also, I think there was just and we'll get into maybe more of this aspect of it too, but I think there was sort of a recognition, starting to be a recognition at that point of the ambitious nature of all the plans and things that we were trying to do anyway. And then as you're dealing with beach traffic and as you're landing in these kind of conditions and all that, it kind of I think actually in a good way sort of forced a little bit of shrinking of scope and kind of narrowing of focus. And I think in a way it was kind of a good thing in a way. I think it kind of, and this is what we'll get to in terms of the overall, I think maybe the narrative kind of truth about what we experience, which is just, that we're low hour pilots and, we're not, you know, uh, whatever. We're not going to go skydive out of the plane or do something crazy or whatever. We're not like, we may be on YouTube, but we're not like YouTube crazy. And when you're on a trip like that, and you've also got the fatigue that's led you into the trip, and then I don't know, just things about it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yes, my plane being stuck and needing to get back to bring a mechanic to was a huge change of plans.
Yeah, it was a huge
And
change.
yeah.
And other moving parts were happening. I'm gonna break my own rule. I was gonna wait and do questions here in the back half, but I'm going to answer Fly Sport's question right now, because I did make a weird comment a minute ago. He said, "Curious what was interesting about the flight following?" Because I said, which was interesting. So it's Cherry Point approach. There's a ton of military stuff going on there, and um, they're pretty strict. I mean, it's pretty tight around that, some of those areas. And what the only interesting part was that I was disappointed. It comes back to what Brian was just saying a minute ago about kind of the what some of the realizations, which we'll get into as well. Like, we have a list of some big picture takeaways, but like, I rarely, and this is not like patting myself on the back, but I rarely miss a radio call or don't do something right, on flight following, or like navigate incorrectly, or like, it is exceedingly rare that I miss a thing like that. It's much less rare that I like have a bad landing, or I mean, it's exceedingly rare on that stuff. I was so caught up in all of the distraction. There was one point where I was screwing around between radios because of this air to air frequency and talking to people, that I was on flight following and stopped listening to Calm One, like completely stopped listening to Cherry Point Approach. And I realized it when I looked up and saw at some point the light wasn't on my Calm One, receive, and I hit it just in time to hear in a stern voice, Cherokee, November 15152. If you hear this transmission, ident. So they had been trying to reach me, and I wasn't responding, which that just doesn't happen. So I was pretty disappointed. It kind of illuminated the bigger picture point that we'll talk about in a minute. So that was the interesting part about that. So anyway, we got back. All of us got back to Currituck on Friday afternoon. Went back to the house. What did we eat Friday?
Wasn't that didn't Mark's wife cook the
Oh yes, Mark's wife cooked Friday night. It was delicious.
Yes.
Um, we waited. Michael Young. I don't know if he's in here tonight. Flew in from Georgia Friday evening in I mean, beautiful 2020 Cirrus SR20. Um, Came in, landed, right around sunset, a little after sunset, and then drove down and met us at the house and hung out with us Friday night, which was super cool. And then went to bed too late again. Got up on Saturday morning. What kind of left in waves on Saturday morning because the early group, Brian, Ben, had to go to fly with the mechanic in Ben's plane down to Ocracoke to work on the plane, and then the rest of us came a little bit later, probably about an hour later. And while we were waiting word from them, Mark and I and Cecilia got to fly in the Cherokee a little bit. We did some pattern work trying to work out the bugs from the landing the day before, and also Michael flew the Cirrus. Mark got to go for a ride in that, so we did a little bit of just kind of putzing around in the airplanes while we waited to hear from them.
And also, by the way, I mean, and we'll get into it more also, but the Currituck Airport is just awesome. It's a comfortable place. You've got everything you need. The runway is great, big runway. It's just actually a good place to be based out of and to kind of park, and you've got everything you need. And obviously, having an entire mechanic school on the premises is great. But just
Mm-hmm.
everything about it, cheap fuel. I mean, just I can't say enough about how great the whole experience was there. And it's kind of like when you go on vacation somewhere and you have all, you're a tourist and you want to see all the attractions and you want to do all the thing. But then you just kind of realize where we actually are staying is just really awesome. I mean, so I
Yeah.
think that it wasn't some huge sacrifice to be kind of hanging around Currituck and putting around there. It was so beautiful and the water right there and, just a great airport. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was
so
awesome.
everybody got to ride with everybody. And then meanwhile, the sage and the professor flew me down to Ocracoke, and then I got to go to mechanic school because it's one thing for somebody to just say, "I'm just going to do this thing for you, and I'm just going to check out the plane, and we'll figure out what it is if it's a bad mag or something with the plugs or whatever." We got in there. He laid out all of his tools, and then the next thing I know, I'm with him. We're tearing through this plane. We did all this stuff that maybe a lot of other people get to do as owners or get to be around. But for me as a renter, I don't really get to be around these things. So for me, it was just an incredible education. But when we went through the timing and went through, I mean, just all of these details on the plane, and I just learned so much. I can't even, but he was in professor mode. I mean, he's a teacher. So he was putting me through I felt like it was day one of A&P school for me. And that's really what it was. I mean, it was awesome. Such an incredible experience. It was one of those things too, where, I mean, he even had not one of the mags of the plane, but he had another one with him. I mean, he went through the whole anatomy of mags and here's how people put them on wrong. And here's the common problems I see. And just all these details. I really wish that other people would have even just been there to soak that in, because everybody, even if you're knowledgeable, would have gotten probably something out of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, long story short, we ripped everything apart, put it back together again, and rebooted it or whatever, and everything was cool. I will say that and I've told you about this, but I had a little moment of I always try to think about, like, what would my wife say at this moment, about, like, what would her objective opinion be about the safety of what's going on right now? And I'm
Right.
walking out to that plane, and I see the mechanic pack up all of his tools and walk towards the Sage's plane, Ben's plane, and it just hit me at that moment. I'm like, he's not flying back with me. I'm on my own. Okay, so,
I think it I think it probably had more to do with, I mean, who would not want to get in the
Ben's
Sage's plane?
and the seats in his plane are basically lazy boys.
I mean,
I love Ben's plane, and Ben's such an incredible pilot too. It was really good to just be around his experience and certainty and wisdom. But anyway, we made it. I made it back. I mean, I was definitely
yeah,
eyeing. I was doing cross sections of each section of beach and making sure I could land. I mean, I was waiting for that thing to go out at any moment for an hour, and it didn't. But you saw me right when I landed, and you were like, I knew you would be like this when you landed.
I did. I was waiting for him by the plane because I know how he's gonna be when he gets here and opens his door, and it was true to form.
I'm
But,
glad I didn't let you down with my neurosis.
no, it was perfect. You were right on cue. But, here's so, to wrap up the I don't wanna just make a play-by-play of this thing, but, the
Sure, yeah.
long and short of it is the plane got back. We all got safely back to Currituck. First flight was on the list for the day. We really didn't wanna not do that as a group. That was, like, kind of a key moment. It was important. But this is where it really starts to show some of the stuff we're talking about, the big picture stuff, the just how inexperienced, as a group we are. And I'm not necessarily speaking for Ben. I'm speaking for like me and you. I mean, like you and I, because we've talked about this. I'm not speaking for everybody else on this flight, but like what hit me was, I see all of these aviation YouTubers, on their big adventures, and their big things that they do. What?
Look at what Josh said here.
What is it? Oh, it's going to be the first trip in the history of aviation where everything goes exactly according to plan with your quote.
Brian
Yeah.
Siskin, March 30th. Yes, but anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, it's funny. Like, you see all these other aviation YouTubers, right? And, like, they go on these big adventures, and they're, like, doing, like, just crazy stuff as groups and, like, in and out of these little, like, strips and, having a great time and living it up and filming everything with, like, 6 cameras and, like, everybody's shooting and there's content. You know what the difference is? And this is what really this is where it really hit me this weekend. It's because they don't have to think about the flying, and I don't mean that in, like, a negligent way. What I'm saying is, like, they do think about flying because they've been flying for thousands of hours, and they just know how to fly. Like, it's so second nature to them. They have the brain capacity and the mental, just the stamina to do all these other things. So that really hit me on Saturday because we wanted to go to first flight, but I did not want to get back in the airplane and fly one more place that day. I was just kind of done. I couldn't do anymore. um, it just took too much energy for me to do it. And so what got sacrificed, kind of the subconscious takeaway was like the right things got sacrificed on this trip. We didn't film as much as we wanted to. Well, it's a good thing that's what was being sacrificed rather than the components of flying the airplane safely like we did. So it was kind of encouraging in that regard, but also just the weekend as a whole, the totality, like the takeaway for me is like just how new to this we are. And if we want to go even like deeper into that thought, we had a really pretty good discussion, I thought, about just how new we are as a species to flying when you really think about the how long the species has existed and what an absolute minute fraction of it. You could say that about a lot of things, but I mean, when you're flying these airplanes and stuff, it's like, yeah, anyway, we're new to this. And so that was a really kind of an eye-opening thing. It made me realize, we would have, we should take those things into account when we're trying to plan these like really busy days. But we did drive to first flight. We ended up kind of piling in the car. Michael was heading out to Georgia anyway, so he just took the Cirrus. He landed. We were on first flight property, at the Wright brothers monument area where we watched him land at first flight and then met up with him. We all walked as a group up to the top of the monument and kind of got to experience that and had some randoms who take our pictures. And it was cool. I mean, that was kind of the peak of that. And then we went back, had great dinner at a local tap house and sampled a bunch of beers. And then Sunday we all came back to the airport and flew home. But it was a pretty exciting weekend. I think there were some pretty big picture lessons, kind of takeaways, don't you think?
A lot, and I think even more will come from it just with a little bit more time. But I think more than anything, it was just when you always hear about the general sort of the spirit of general aviation, people helping people, pilot culture, uh, all of that. Because especially in the internet world, right? You see so much kind of opinions and jousting, and you see a lot of negative maybe things through the lens of perhaps social media. But in real life, IRL, I mean, this mechanic on a Saturday is like, yeah, I got a couple chores to do around the house, but yes, I'll fly with you an hour to go down to this thing that I don't even know what's going on with, this unknown plane to see if I can help, and then fly back, and take a few hours out of a Saturday to do that. And there was nothing about his vibe that felt, kind of like, I'm just doing you a favor, man, or anything like that. He was just happy to be there, and he was just kind of just it was fine. He had his own, he said he had fun, or whatever. So it's like great, and then to see how helpful Ben the Sage was to me was something that was just a little almost overwhelming, but he was the one that had the right plane for the right mission to do the things that we need to do, and had the experience to sort of just smoothly make it all work confidently, and handled all that tough stuff that needed to get done. And then just you and just everybody. I mean, it was just a cool thing to experience. Everybody at the airport manager. Um, well, let's say not everybody at the airport, no, but everybody that works at the airport. There's some Looney Tunes people at the airport, but anyway, but just the point being that everywhere I went, people were helpful and enthusiastic and positive, and you hear about that and you get doses of that, I'm sure, at your home airport, and there, then in but it was just, I was a little bit overwhelmed with that in a good way.
Yeah, it was neat. It was definitely neat to meet all the folks. There was Ben's right. Ben Singer just said the flying was awesome. Camaraderie was even better, and it was super cool to hang out with other similarly experienced. I mean, not all obviously exactly the same, but I mean just similar life stage, like people who have similar experiences, and just to talk about flying. To be honest, some of my favorite stuff was the not fly. I mean, it was just great to like just hang out and talk, and sit out on the deck and just talk for a long time. And it was really cool to meet people that we've met online. I mean, like even Brian and I have talked a bunch. That was our first like in-person meeting,
Full on hang.
and it was great. It was a great
And and
time. And
uh and uh and Cecilia drove us around on the golf cart and raged through your development.
I need that video, by the way. She's asking for it, and I'm definitely going to use it somewhere in one of
It's
the
it's in
things.
the gallery I sent you.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
It's so good. I filmed it, like sort of dad style, where I couldn't figure out what orientation was going on, uh, but it's there.
Yeah.
But that was just all of those things to meet your family, and we had obviously uh, a a really raucous night with your family that
Hey,
first night especially. So I mean, it was just great. I mean, it was just cool to just meet cool people, and there was just a lot of everybody's sort of sharing also kind of, especially those that are, creating any quote unquote content or whatever, kind of getting different points of view about how and why we're all doing what we're doing in different ways, and what we appreciate about what the others, doing, and all that. And now the Sage is going to have to create some content for us because he's got a tail camera now, and I want to see some Sage landings on his YouTube channel that's got 0 videos on it. So that's a challenge, Ben. If you need any help editing, I will do it all for you. But yeah.
yeah, so that's the nutshell recap. We should probably answer some questions because there have
Yeah, let's
been
get to it.
some. There have been some. Here's one of my favorites, and I wish there was an answer to this question, as I'm sure you do as well.
Oh, the smoking gun.
Old Aviator wants to know, well, what was the problem with the mag?
Yeah, so to be determined, I suppose. It was one of those things um we only pulled the top 4 plugs off, and, he was like, I mean, they don't look crazy. He kinda just scraped them a little bit, and we just kinda went through everything, P leads, everything were good. They're both impulse, it's impulse coupling. Anyway, without getting into all the details, don't really know. Um, it could be, I think, a mixture of, no pun intended, the fact that we were flying low altitude, 1,500 feet, for about an hour, and there's various opinions on to what extent or whether you should lean that low of an altitude, but I feel like, even though I did what was prescribed by the owner and the mechanic, said it was fine to do that to run more rich, but I feel like that had to have been something to do with that. And also, like, I just wasn't really looking to, once it started backfiring and all that, I was like, I'm not going to blow up this exhaust system right now or anything else. I'm not skilled as everybody else. I'm not going to start, going full power to really, burn off any carbon or, what, I don't know. Like, I did all the things that I've always done to clear up mags, and it didn't work. And the thing that really had me nervous was the idea that I would turn it to the one mag and it would sometimes just be gone, and then I'd have to save it and come back. He said it might be the wiper in the mag that's, at certain RPM, or, getting stuck, or, anyway. So there was a bunch of things that was, to me, there was still so much ambiguity about it. That's what, by the way, made my hour flight up the coast to Currituck a little unnerving, because there wasn't a smoking gun. Even on the way down there, he was like, we better find a smoking gun. And we didn't. And then I had to fly at 600 nautical miles solo, back, 6 hours, home the next day. And nothing ever went wrong. It was all fine. But so the answer is really unknown. Might be a mixture of things.
Yep. There was a question earlier about personal minimums that I thought was interesting. Because we talked a little bit about that on the before the planning, for these long cross countries and going over there. And I think we actually I had not, full disclosure, I had not modified my minimum since I was a student pilot before my check ride. Not actually physically documented, but I went back and kind of looked about it. And then changed them. But the question was, and I thought it was an interesting conversation in the chat that happened. Jay Little said, "What are your personal minimums when you're with family versus by yourself?" And kind of the takeaway was in the chat was, they probably shouldn't change in terms of like safety minimums, which I think is kind of what Jay Little was implying. It's not the safety minimums anymore, but it might be like passenger comfort, because this was probably during the time we were talking about, flying with your passengers not super comfortable, or, not spend a lot of time in a GA airplane. And so the Badger pilot said, my minimums with family are based more on comfort and safety. I put more effort into a smooth ride and soft landing with them, which probably makes sense. I mean, the safety margins shouldn't necessarily change, like, because it's no different, right? I mean, by yourself or somebody else, it's safety is safety, but the comfort side probably changes some. Marcus here.
There's one way down here, by the way, that says, oh, sorry, you already got this one. Oh, yeah. The mechanic choosing an airplane. Yeah, I mean, that was a moment. That's when you realize, like, oh.
Yeah, it was funny to hear you like tell it the first time down there when you're like, it just hit me. Like, he walked and set his bags down by Ben's plane. He was never even thinking about getting in this plane with me.
And he was standing there hearing this.
It's pretty funny.
But yeah, so Johnny McClung has one from way down in the list that says, will there be another fly-in in the future? And that he would have loved to have been there.
So, great question. We talked about this some after the fact. We are going to try to get together again, and there are multiple things that have come out of this. One of them is I want to, we want to have something that is not a public thing. I mean, like, that's just our little private discussion here, but like, it would be nice to have a thing that's just us, like, where we can actually just like hang out and like not have a thing. The other thing I learned is the next one we do, I don't want to plan or host. Like, I want to come to somebody. Well, I'm serious. I want to come to somebody's thing, and we need to do it in a way that is like, everybody's responsible for getting yourself to this place. how you get to the airport is up to you. Like, because we were getting into the minutia of, which is totally fine. It had to be for this trip because the way we were staying at a house, and like it made sense for this one. But like the minutia of like, when are the rental cars being delivered? We're shuffling rental cars. We're trying to get in the place to get keys for like Ben's rental car because like he had to take you back to the air. I mean, there was just like there were a lot of then we left the airport with Michael's car keys in our car and had to turn around. You know what I mean? Like there were just so many logistics that I would just be like, I would love to do another one somewhere and where we all hang out and fly and just hang out and eat food and whatever. But I do not want to host or like coordinate the next one. I need one to just like go hang with people.
Do we still call it the Midlife Pilot Fly-In?
I mean, I'll take it if I can still own the brand. I mean, I'll take it.
It's like, you know what? If I just do less work, but it's still in sort of my brand, this is
That
even
is
getting better. This is
that
great.
is the story of my life. That is my initiative with every aspect
Yeah.
of life.
No, I mean, I mean, here's the thing: is it's just a situational sort of reality in the sense that we wanted to do coastal flying, and you have a house there, and so that's just where, unless you have houses in other places, this is not going to happen again because just the nature of things. I mean, it's just going to be in a less remote place probably, and with more options and more ease of, everybody can get right next to whatever airport and, skateboard over to the thing or whatever,
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
Like,
right,
it's
right, right.
just a situational thing.
Yep. Fly Sport says, curious about the themes of the big picture learnings. Probably good future topic fodder. And I think there are going to be more. I think there will be more topics about it. I mean, because I do think that there is a lot more. Oh,
Visitor.
excuse me. Uh,
For the audio podcast, there is a giant cat in front of Chris's head.
excuse me. 1 minute. Could you say hello? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think there are some takeaways for sure that are beyond even what we kind of just mentioned tonight. I just haven't really fully had time to maybe solidify some of them. Yeah. Uh, Mark, One Dog Geek, making dinner that one night was our bare minimum attempt to take some of the burden off you, Chris. Well, it definitely was legit. It
Oh,
was like
yeah.
rice and chicken, and it was just Brussels sprouts. I mean, it was mushrooms.
And a really good sauce.
Oh,
It was good. Where are you right now?
yeah, I'm hungry. Kevin Kuhn says, if I coordinate, do I get to come and fly for free? We could probably work something out for sure. Ben, I'm willing to coordinate one and maybe on the Georgia coast, which would be legendary because there's a handful of things down there. We know Michael's, in that area and some others who are around, and it would be called the Midlife Fly-In. So yeah, we could totally go do one down there. I would love to come down that area.
Sage Fest.
Sage Fest 2023 next year. That's good, man. It was a good time. I'm still not fully. I don't think I'm fully recovered from it.
Yeah, still processing. I will say just about my flight back. That was probably the greatest feeling I actually felt when I landed. I really felt like I felt very similar to how I felt when I passed my check ride. I don't know why. I mean, other people do this stuff, right? But flying 2 3 hour legs right in a row with just an hour break in between, and the challenges that I had along the way on that flight with the transponder going in and out and all kinds of other things that were happening, and then flying directly into the sun for the last hour through terrain, jets going off the departure end of Chattanooga right in front of me, and just I would have to turn off course just to kind of give my eyes a rest and then get back on course, and I had to really time my descent to get down to Winchester at just the right point where everything flattens out. I didn't want to come in super high and then be dive bombing, and my descent went really well. And most importantly, I had been, the winds had been gusting 18 to 20 there all day, and I just wasn't gonna put myself into a position of having a really difficult, sketchy possible landing or whatever at the end of all this fatigue and just everything else. I just really, so I timed it perfect. Sunset came in. It was just, whatever, 5 knots straight down the runway. And I came in and I put it down perfectly smooth, greaser of a landing. And just that feeling that, of that kind of relief or whatever, it was like, it was very check ride-esque, it was very satisfying. And then, I text everybody to know that I landed. They're like, "Dude, I'm asleep." It's, and I was like, "Whoa, dude, oh yeah, I totally forgot you were flying. You're still flying? Really?" But no, but it was an incredibly satisfying accomplishment in my mind to do that trip on my own, 600 plus nautical miles, and to know that I can do that, and also to know that I don't need to do that ever again. But if I ever am in the position where it's like, that's what we got to do to beat weather or something, I can do it. So it was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Ben Singer says, "I have a question. Will the Midlife podcast reimburse the mechanic for his chiropractor bills from my landing?"
The
All
professor.
right. Look, I'm not one to, I mean, I'm certainly not one to like tell on landings, but I don't know if I even told Ben the story of his landing with the professor. Actually, never mind. I'm not going to tell the story because it wasn't that landing, because now it's getting embarrassing. But yes, it was.
Wait, is he talking about the one that was back at Currituck after I was out of the plane, or the one with together at Whiskey 95?
I only saw the one uh, at Currituck,
Okay.
and the funny story about it was, your pilot at the airport, everybody watched everybody else landing. And I had several that same morning because we were flying at all those 60-foot wide strips. And then we came back to the 150-foot wide strip of Currituck. And when I was landing there, I couldn't believe I wasn't on the ground yet. Like, I had one of those like out of body experiences where I was like pulling back and flaring around, and I just kept pulling. I thought, I cannot believe my wheels aren't on the ground. I mean, I've got to be on the ground. I didn't do anything else to correct it except pulled harder, like, and it's a stall horns like blaring, and I had nothing left. Like, I stalled the thing from a few feet off, and like main wheels, nose wheel, it's fine, it's fine. Well, I was standing in the. Oh yeah, that's right, that's right. It was Ben and Mark went out for pattern laps. So we're standing in the conference room. We had this really cool conference room with all glass, like right on the kind of on the ramp, looking out the runway. So I was watching them come in, and there were a couple guys from the airport and like a few of us in the conference room. And I'm just kind of watching, like, oh, here they come. They're coming back now and they're landing. And somebody else was in mid conversation, and I saw like his kind of drop in, like kind of dropped in bounce, and I was like, oh, bounce, there's a bounce, and everybody kind of like ran to the windows. Look, I said, no, they're okay. It just was, kind of surprising. But yeah, anyway,
Very unsage like landing.
very unsage like compared to what we saw the rest of the time.
You
But
can't win them all, Ben,
that's
but
right.
you did a great job. And I can't say enough about how Ben was so helpful, but his plane is so badass. It's like, for me being mostly a 172 guy, to get into a 182, it's the strangest thing, like I was telling you, because it looks, feels, and smells like a 172 in so many ways. But boy, was that an experience. And I know that Bearded Aviator also has a pretty hype 182 down in at his airport. I'm definitely I'm now aware of the beauty of the 182 in a totally different way, because it was awesome. But I will say, like, I one kind of, I don't know if it's a topic, but maybe we'll get into it later. But landing on a wider runway than what you're used to, we've all done the landing on a narrower runway than what you're used to. But man, visually, it's like it's got to be almost like what it feels like. It felt like you were doing a gear up landing every time. Like, it would just swallow you into, like, you felt like the runway was up here, above you almost. You just kept going, and it's so frustrating because you're like, oh man, this is gonna be a beauty. Like, I've got this all set up great, and then it's like, what, but bam,
It was also sloped. That was the other factor. That
yeah.
was also a sloped runway, so that was between those 2 things, it was, it just was, I don't know, multiple times at that airport, which I've landed at several times before. It just caught me off guard. 2-3 is better for me. I don't know if it's the slope angle, that I guess the ground is coming to you that way. So that's probably a little bit better than going away from you. But like,
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe I wasn't on the ground. I'm just like, nope, not on the ground. Well,
All
anyway,
right. Well,
that
hey,
was awesome.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks for hanging out tonight to hear the recap. There'll be a ton of media coming. If you don't already follow, real quick plug. I don't know if you don't already follow Brian on YouTube, you should definitely subscribe. I think it's just youtube.com/Siskind, I believe. Or
Yeah,
is it
there's a link in the description of this
Oh, that's right.
video.
Also to his Instagram, where there's some really killer imagery all the time that I told him before the show tonight, I've been enjoying taking some pointers for like composition and just kind of look. But anyway, he's got a great Instagram that you should also check out, and I'm sure you'll be posting some of your stuff and also mine as well. We'll have we did I say we didn't record enough. We recorded a lot, so we'll have some
I
great
recorded
video.
nothing, by the way.
Well, yeah, but you've got some stills and
I've
some
got some
stuff
other
in your
stuff, but I didn't
phone.
record any of my flying at all, which, I don't regret at all. I was actually present and I enjoyed it. So, but anyway, but yeah, so there's a lot of stuff coming from everybody. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting sort of cross-pollination and, different points of view experiences from everybody. I know,
For sure.
Mark's got a lot, everybody's got a lot, and so it's gonna be really cool to see what everybody comes up with.
Well, thanks for potting for episode 13. We'll see everybody in a couple weeks. New topics coming soon, and
Oh, yeah, and I got one more thing.
yep,
Whoever's listening to the audio podcast here, which is really the majority of our audience, the reviews really, really are helpful, and I've been noticing without even really us asking that people are starting to leave more reviews on iTunes and all of that, and that is, actually super helpful to do that. So if you do listen to the audio, or if you're just a person that's usually in here with us live, go subscribe to the audio podcast and press buttons that help the algorithm think more highly of us. It really actually helps a lot. It's been really cool though to not even talk about that and to see what people have already left us in terms of really kind reviews and all that. But the more we get, the better. So cool.
yes, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Everybody have a great night. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.